Welcome to your Bio 113 class. When you first log into the class, you're going to see, you're going to be put into the Start Here section. This will change, but for this first week, I want to have you start there. The first section here tells you a little bit about what the class is, what it's all about, and a little bit about how I'm going to run this and what you need to know. You don't need a book for this class. If you want a book, you can either use your 112 book, or I'm linking here a free educational resource biology book that's actually pretty decent. Then this section here explains to you what the different buttons are. So you've got the Start Here button, you've got the Syllabus button, which has the syllabus and things that are sort of related to the syllabus, like withdrawal information. Announcements is where you're going to in the future end up landing on. Info and resources is anything that's not directly related to the topic that we're covering. So and I'll jump into that for a second in just a little bit. Then you've got the class materials, you've got the course content and the lab simulations, the Labster simulations. When you click on the course content, this is where you should go every week. Every week, you're going to find in the course content a module that covers the topic that we're covering. And when you click in there, it gives you a little bit of an overview, what the concepts are we're going to be covering, a little bit of a walkthrough through the class, what you're going to do that day, that week. Then a listing of all the things I want you to do. Then you're going to get to the section where the handouts are. Make sure you look at the handouts. The handouts contain a lot of the background information you need. And you should not attempt your homework assignments without looking at the handout. Then I go over the handout and maybe a couple of ancillary items in the handout in the lecture. So that's the background information that you need to have. I tell you a little bit of what the kinds of things you should be paying attention to. And then we're going to jump into demonstrations, because this is a lab class, right? So the demonstrations can be a number of different things. Sometimes I'll simulate the lab demo, so the Labster demo. Sometimes it's so Labster is the program you're going to use basically as an online laboratory task. But sometimes I have a video that I can show you, or sometimes there's some difficulty trying to get through it, and so I try to help you get across the difficult parts and kind of give you an idea of what this whole simulation looks and feels like. And then there's oftentimes a lab demonstration, because I want you to kind of have as much of a lab experience as you can. And what we're doing in the first week is we're going to be looking at termites. And I'll tell you in the class walkthrough more about that. Then you come to the section of the activities and assignments, and these are the things in this section is what I want you to do. So for the first week, there's going to be a Labster activity about experimental design. And then there's going to be a question set. So that's what I'm going to call the questions that are basically associated with a lab handout. We call those question sets. A lot of times the information and the data that you need for these question sets are in a Google site that I have. So a lot of times I'll have you link to this Google site to like videos to watch. And in our case this time, I'll actually give you data that you can do, that you can essentially do an experiment with. Once you're done with that, you get to the review section, which just tells you what the learning objectives were that you should have been getting out of there. And then in some sections, sometimes you have optional resources that tell you other things that I find interesting that obviously are optional, but they speak to things that are part of the material and to some aspect of the material. So in this particular case, the exact instruction challenge is actually an interesting one, because when we talk about science and when we talk about experiments, we have to be very, very exacting, and so that's what that exact instruction challenge peanut butter and jelly sandwich speaks to. And then this last one is a TED talk that I thought was really interesting, because a lot of times when people talk about science, they're like, why are we studying this? This makes no sense. And Deborah Gordon, she's an evolutionary biologist, and she talks about, I think she's an evolutionary biologist. She talks about what we can learn from ants about how to run computer networks. And what we can learn from ants about cancer, the spread of cancer in the body. So one of my favorite sayings is, if you only have a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. And so part of what I want to give you in this class is tools, more tools, so you can approach life slightly differently from the way you did before.